At the risk of being repetitive, so those that heard this from me should forgive me, but I had a thought now as I look at the people that are joining us, the people that are viewing us from afar. And we do have a very wide circle of listeners and viewers here, whether you're a TorahAnytime.com devotee, or Kol Haloshin, or on the more recent mediums of YouTube and Facebook and subscriptions, and Zooming. About 35 years ago, there was a big sting in Brooklyn, and they unmasked a ring of seifrim that were selling tefillin that was made with glue. Now, tefillin have to be made begidin, with sinew, sewn with sinew. That's halach l'moshe misinai. So tefillin made with glue is puzzle. And they were operating for a while, and people found out that all their life they were wearing tefillin that was puzzle. Imagine one day you get a message that all your life you're wearing tefillin that was puzzle. You didn't fulfill the mitzvah of tefillin. It wasn't your fault, but you missed all those mitzvahs d'oraisa. You were saying Kriya Shema without tefillin on your head. You were davening Shemoneh Esrei. Without tefillin, you didn't have the protection of the tefillin. So we asked Rav Moshe at a Chanukah Mesiba. I believe I asked him, why would Hashem do that to people? So Rav Moshe always gave us a shmooze at the Chanukah Mesiba. It was in the gym downstairs in the yeshiva. And he changed his shmooze to address this question. And he said something that to someone like Baruch Iyun, this wouldn't be such a chiddush. But to someone like me, also to Saba, it won't be such a chiddush. He said that we think that when we do a mitzvah, we deserve a pat on the back. I'm a big cheese. And we forget that we have to thank Hashem for the privilege to be able to do the mitzvah. Now, it took me 25 years to really understand where Rav Moshe was coming from. When you know now that there's 7 years difference between Rav David Feinstein, Olav Shalom, and Rav Ruvain Feinstein, because for 7 years they didn't have a kosher mikveh, then you understand that you thank Hashem for a kosher mikveh. We have to thank Hashem that we can sit and learn like this. We have to thank Hashem for our amazing Gemaras. You might have an art scroll in front of you. You might have a Chavrusa in front of you. You might have a Mesifta Gemara in front of you. We have such a smorgasbord of Gemaras. In the biography that I'm reading now, the close of Rebbe, it says how he cried when they brought the first Gemara into Fehrenwald, into the DP camp. He finally saw a Gemara. All the while that he was in Auschwitz, he didn't see a Gemara. How he cried when he saw a Gemara. That we could gather, and that we have shiurim, and that we could sit in our homes, whether it's Chicago, whether it's Tannersville, whether it's Woodlake, whether it's Staten Island, whether it's Florida, whether it's Marine Park. that we have the ability for this. Oh yeah, dank the Eibishter. That's why I say, Baruch Shechiyanu v'kiyamanu v'giyanu l'azman hazeh. And here in Fairways, we see people who were big Talmidei Chachamim, and now they don't have the mental ability anymore to learn. And how we have to thank Hashem that we're able to learn. It's a big thing. We received, Baruch Hashem, quite a few dedications for this Masechta. So the first one who sponsored all the Bavas was A.B. Spry for Nachas. All his children should be Bavas. Shalom Fogel is sponsoring it, Lili Nishmas. I remember them well, Jack and Jeannie, his parents, Rabbi Yaakov Zeb and Rabbi Yehuda Aryeh, and Rivka Bas Rabbi Yaakov Yosef, and for Tzivya Miriam Bas Reb Gad, and Rabbi Yosef ben Sion ben Rabbi Yaakov Zev. Baruchian is sponsoring the Masechta for his father, Yaakov Chaim ben Abba, Esther Bas Gittel, his father-in-law, Avram ben Shmuel HaKayin. Yaakov Yumansky, Menachem Yumansky's father, is sponsoring it as a Kors HaTov to the Rebbe and to the Zoom family, and Nachas from the children and grandchildren. And then we received 2 virtual sponsors. They just sponsored it, from Ed Saleh from London and Joshua Rosenberg, a virtual listener. Also, Irving asked us to learn for his niece, Chana Pesa, Bas Rabbi Yehuda Chaim. The Shama should have an aliyah. So, this Masechta is going to talk about a lot of the laws of Shchenim. You know, it's interesting, there's a saying, good fences make good neighbors. There's a lot of truth to that. Good fences make good neighbors. And this Masechta starts off talking about fences. The Masechta also talks about the expectations of privacy, which is called Hezek Re'iyah. And the Masechta talks about also following the Minig Medina, which is again a very important thing. You got to follow the Minig Medina. You got to follow the ways of the customs of your place. There are a lot of people that don't understand this idea. There's a big Indian of al tifrei shminat tzibur. Don't be different than the tzibur. The mamash are people that don't understand this. You know, in Eretz Yisrael, you'll come to shul, and you'll see a lot of people come in open sandals and barefoot feet. You'll see that it's pretty customary, especially in the suburbs, to see people come without socks. And it's almost like they were going to the beach. But that's not the Minig Medina here. There's an Indian of Al Tifrish Menatzibah. By Satmar, they put up a sign that people should wear a jacket and a hat. That's the Minig Medina. That's the Minig Medina. You don't come into shul in a t-shirt. You can't be Parish Menatzibah. Let me welcome in Irving Fishbaum, Dr. Block, Marshall Castle, Shelley Zeitlin, Dr. Guy. I almost said Jack Fogel. Shalom Fogel. You know, Shalom, I see your father in front of me. Your father sat in many of my shiurim, because your father was by my shiurim in Saltzman's and in Dishner's. Israel Fisher, Michal, Stephen Holtzman, Menachem Umansky, Nachman Chapler, Yitzi Fuchs, Moshe Lehman, Eddie Chazan, Ilya Shutman, A. Barbach, Rabbi Kranz, Yeshua Shmuel Eisenberg. We have here Richard Rosenzweig. I don't know who Mitzvah Power is. Yoni Lugassi, Jack Silverman, and David Helfgott on Kol Haloshin. Here in the shul, one shy of a minyan with Gedalia, who has a chassan at night. We would have had a minyan. I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed. I have to figure out what more to do. I don't know. You know, in the olden days, you would say sushi and cholent, and that might do it. No, really. I'm coming. Really, I don't know, but I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, we welcome in Berish and Reb Kramer, Rich Lenner, Avram Rezepkowitz, Michal Avram, Saba, Baruch Ian, and Ruvain Shannet for joining us. So, and you know the famous story that in yeshiva we always said Hashutvin. It became more popular to say it the correct grammatical way is Hashutofin. So let's get some good partners over here. Shelley and Marshall. Shelley and Marshall, they share a courtyard. So Hashutofin Shiratzu Lasais Mechitza B'Chatzer, if they want to be good neighbors. So, and if I was Shelley, I would surely want to put up a wall, right? So Hashutofin Shiratzu Lasais Mechitza B'Chatzer, if Shelley and Marshall want to put up a mechitza, a partition, so then they each give an equal amount of land, so they do it smack in the middle of their courtyard. Now, what building materials? So here we go according to local custom. Makom shenogu livnois gevil, if the minig is to use uncut stone, you should use uncut stone. Gazes, cut stone, you should use cut stone. Kfisin, if the minig is to use two parallel half bricks with mortar in between, you use that. Levainim, if minig is to use just one brick. Bainin, hakol kaminig amadina. We go according to the local custom. Now, if you remember, now the Mishnah is going to say, remember, gevil, uncut stone, is 6 tvachim. Because it's uncut and it has rough edges, it's wide 6 tvachim. So since it's 6 tvachim, each has to give 3 tvachim. Gvil, zeh noisin gimel tvachim, zeh noisin gimel tvachim. Shelley has to give 3 tvachim of land, and Marshall has to give 3 tvachim of land. Because it's cut stone, which is therefore, because it doesn't have any edges, it's 5 tvachim, so then each one has to give 2.5. So then Shelley gives 2.5. And Marshall gives 2.5. Bikfisen, if it's half bricks, in other words, they use 2 half bricks. Each half brick is 1.5 wide, and there's a tefach of mortar in between. So that's a total of 1.5 plus 1.5 plus 1 tefach of mortar. So that's 4 tvachim. So since it's 4 tvachim, so therefore zenoisin tvachim. Shelley gives 2 tvachim of real estate. V'zenoisin tvachim, and Marshall gives 2 tvachim. Bilevainin, a levainin, 1 brick is 3 tvachim. So then each one gives zenoisin tefach machza. Then Shelley gives a tefach and a half. V'zenoisin tefach machza. Now, therefore, if 10 years down the line the wall collapses. And now let's say they don't want to rebuild it. Hamokaim, the area in the courtyard, va'avanim, and the stones themselves, which are worth money, shel shneim, equally belongs to each of them. V'chein begina, and likewise in a garden. Mokum shenogu ligdar, if the minig is to put up a fence separating the garden. Mechayven oisai. Aval bebika, you see, in a garden, there's a lot of things growing. And Shelley is worried that Marshall will give him an evil eye when Marshall sees how nice his avocados are growing and how nice he's growing these delicious Brussels sprouts, and Marshall's Brussels sprouts are pathetic, right? And he'll give him the evil eye. So he could demand that they put up a fence. However, actually, we'll see also that in a garden there might be an issue of privacy. Aval babika, but in a valley where there's just grain, where the common practice was that they didn't make a fence, then then Shelley can't make Marshall participate. Elim Ratza, if Shelley wants to have a fence, Marshall doesn't have to play ball. He doesn't have to give up any of his space in his garden. Then he has to withdraw and make the entire he has to withdraw and make the entire wall. I think I see somebody coming in the back over there. Oh, Avram, you're the minion. Look at that. Avram is the minion. You know, Avram, when you bring in a minion, you bring in a special shina. So, first of all, I would have been crazy happy to see you even without that. But now that you bring in the minion, you're a very special character. Avram Shankman is joining us with his son Sino. I feel very nostalgic to see a son Sino. The first time I learned Shas, first Daf Yomi I gave, in 1982. I finished Shas with the Sansino in 1982. From cover to cover, except that there was no English translation at all in those days for Yerushalmi Shkolim. Of course, now there's an amazing art scroll on it, both for Bavli and Yerushalmi. Amazing, but in those days, there was nothing. As a matter of fact, Avram, I used to go to the Brooklyn Public Library and get the small Sansinos. You remember the small Sansinos? There were small pocket-sized Sansinos. I will also tell you, once we're on the subject, I will also tell you that when I was a scholar in residence in New Haven, Connecticut, by Rabbi Avigdor, so Rabbi Avigdor had a pass to go into the Yale Library. There's a restricted Judaica section in the Yale Library. And I had so much fun up there. I never realized that there are many other translations of Shas. Sansino had the Zechiyah to be accepted by the world. But there are many other translations of Shas, and you know, for those like me, that I grew up, my mother's milk of Chumash was the blue Chumash. Remember the blue Chumash with Rashi? Every house has the blue Chumash and Rashi. You remember, Ruvain, the blue Chumash and Rashi? That also had the schus that was accepted. There are many, many, many other English Chumashim that didn't see the light of day. Anyway, it's good to have you, Rabbi Avram. We are holding on Beis Amud Aleph, and we are holding. We'll start again for Rabbi Avram by Avol Babika, which is from the bottom, 9 lines from the bottom of Beis Amud Aleph. Avol Babika, in a valley, then Mokum Shinoga Shaloilig, the normal custom is not to make a fence in the middle of a grain field. Ein mechayven, I say. Then Shelley can't force Marshall to make a fence. Elim Ratza, if Shelley wants a wall, then Kaines L'Soich Shalai, he has to bring the wall completely into his part of the valley. And he has to make it all from his own materials. Now, how is Shelley going to prove that it was his? 10 years down the line, how is he going to prove that it was completely his? And he makes a identification on Marshall's side of the wall. Now the Gemara is going to talk a lot about this. The Gemara is going to say that this is the safest way, because if Marshall tries to deface it, it will be noticeable that he's tried to deface it. So when he has a sign on Marshall's side of the wall, that's a sign, a proof, because if it was on his side, maybe he did it without permission. But when it was on Marshall's side, everybody will know that Marshall gave permission that it should be there, and that shows that the wall is entirely on Shelley's real estate, and it's all from his materials. If the wall falls down, both the real estate underneath and the stones are all Shelley's. But if Marshall says, a wall is a good idea, if Marshall says a wall is a good idea, then they build the wall in the middle. Each one gives an equal amount. And then they put a mark on both sides, which proves that it belongs to both of them. If the wall falls down, the place and the stones belong to both of them. Now, by the way, over here, we see another thing. As a Rav, I've advised people over and over and over again. You get a contractor, a Yiddish contractor, Chaim Shmuel from Kensington. Write down everything, Barachel Bidcha Aktana, to the who's going to be responsible if it costs more to get the materials, who's going to be responsible if it rains for 60 days, whatever you could think about, write down. And that's what the Gemara is showing us over here. The Gemara says, now don't say, we'll remember whose it is. No. Whatever you could do before, that's the way to do things. Says the Gemara, as we welcome in Daniel Rosenberg, joining us 3 lines from the bottom of Daf Beis Amud Aleph. 3 lines from the bottom of Daf Beis Amud Aleph. Savrua, my mechitza, when it says the way we learned that partners that want to make a mechitza, it means a wall. My mechitza guda. And how do we know that mechitza is a wall? Kedetanya mechitza sakerem shenifritza. If, let's say, Eddie and Shalom have fields next to each other. Now, Eddie has a vineyard. Shalom has a grain field. Now, Eddie's vineyard is toxic for Shalom's grain field, because if Eddie's vines get near Shalom's grains, it makes it kloya kerem, a forbidden mixture, which is also even by no, you can't even sell to a guy. So mechitza kerem shenifritza, the wall between the vineyard and the grain field got breached. Aimrim loy gedar. So Shalom tells Eddie, fence it. Chazav and ifritza, it gets breached again. Aimrim loy gedar. Shalom says, Eddie, this is toxic for me. You got to fence it. Nisyayish, amen. But Eddie is in Topeka, Kansas. Eddie is in Houston and Dallas. Eddie is in Orlando. Eddie is in, Oshkosh, Begash, Wisconsin, right? And Veloy Gadra. So the vines intermingled with Shalom's grain. Harizek Kidesh. It makes it forbidden. The term Kiddush is from the lashon of the pasuk Zum Gesund, Reb Avram, from the lashon of the pasuk Pen Tuktash, that if vine and grain gets mixed up to Kadesh, it has to be burnt with fire. Harizek Kiddush v'chayev b'achri yusei, and Eddie has to pay for it. So, but that we only brought this down, not to defame Eddie. We only brought this down because it shows that mechitza means a wall. So time of the Ratzu. It's only if Shelley and Marshall want to make the fence. But if they don't, let's say Marshall says, I don't want a fence. I like a lot of expansive. I like to feel expansiveness. He doesn't want a fence. So ein mechayven I say. Then Shelley can't force him to put up the fence. So that means that even though the fact of the matter is, in tropical countries, they didn't have air conditioning. In tropical countries, roiv tashmi shehen b'chatza. The majority of their living was in the courtyard. They didn't have living rooms. They didn't have dining rooms. They ate in the courtyard. They lounged in the courtyard. So you see over here that even though Shelley wants to lounge around, in whatever, he can't say to Marshall, I want a wall. Alma hezek ria lav shmei hezek. The fact that Marshall is able to see what's going on, that's not considered a damage. It's not the invasion of privacy. In this case, what's done in the courtyard is not enough that Shelley could demand that he participate in a fence. Says the Gemara, well, but maybe that's not pshat in the Mishnah. Maybe when it says shiratzu la'asais mechitza, it means that they want to make a division. Ve'ema mechitza plukta. Maybe when it says over here that to make a mechitza, it means a division. Like it says, the division of the congregation. In other words, it's talking about, we're going to learn later on in the Gemara, we're going to learn about this in length, that we're going to see that if the courtyard is not big enough, that each will be left with 4 amas, which is about around 6 to 8 feet. That each would be left for 6 to 8 feet. Then you can't force a division, right? So this is talking about where there's not enough room for that. And therefore, they can't force a division. But if they do agree on a division, the Kavan the Ratzu, if they do agree on a division, so then Marshall can't say it's enough to put up pegs as markers. No, then once Shelley says, I have my part and you have your part, then he could insist on building a wall, because once it's his part, Alma hezek ria shmei hezek. That means that invasion of privacy is an invasion. In other words, the Mishnah might mean that it's talking about too small of a courtyard. So if it's too small of a courtyard, they can't force to divide. But if they both agree that they should divide your part, my part, then it's not enough to put up just a marker to demarcate which part is Shelley's and which part is Marshall's. Then you have to put up a wall, because hezek ria shmei hezek. It is an invasion of privacy. So then the Gemara starts getting technical. Ihachi, hai shiratzu la'asais mechitza. Why does it say partners that want to make a mechitza, a wall? It should just say shiratzu lachtzais mibayla. It should say if they want to divide. Says the Gemara, elamai, what are you going to say? Mechitza means a wall? Elamai guda? Then why does it say shutrin shiratzu la'asais mechitza bainin es hakaisel? It should say bainin oisai. Bainin es hakaisel. It shouldn't say they should build a wall. If mechitza means a wall, it should say bainin oisai mebailei. So the Gemara says, Itana Oisai, if it would say Oisai, Havamina b'Mesifas ba'alma. It's enough with a mere low divider, Kamash Malan, that it has to be then a kaisel, that it has to be a wall. So basically, the Gemara over here at this part, it seems to come out that since it doesn't say hashutfin shiratzu lachatzais, so it doesn't mean shutfin that want to divide. Rather, it means shutfin that want to build a wall. That would imply that it's only if they want to. But if they don't want to, it can't be insisted upon, because hezek re'iyah lav shmei hezek. Now, we're going to see that this doesn't mean invasion of privacy in your house is not invasion of privacy. We're going to see invasion of privacy in the house is different. That's certainly an invasion. Remember when Bilam saw Klal Yisrael, he said, Ma tovu alecha Yaakov, because he saw that the windows were staggered and they weren't opposite each other. That people shouldn't look into other people's houses. To look into a person's house, to peep into people's windows, that's certainly an invasion of privacy. That's certainly forbidden. So now it says that if Marshall and Shelley agree to divide, then Bainen es hakaisel be'emtza. So then each one gives an equal amount of real estate for the wall. Right? Like we said, depending on what building material it is, if it's uncut stone, which is 6 tvachim, so each gives 3 tvachim of their courtyard. If it's cut stone, each give then 2.5, etc. Says Gemara Pshita, that's obvious. Of course they should each give. Shelley says to Marshall, I want to build a wall. Marshall says, nah. And Shelley pushes him. So Marshall says, okay. So Maud is saying, I agreed, okay, that it should, take away my expansive view. But betashmishta, that you should also take acreage for my courtyard, that lo yitzratzoi, that I didn't agree with. Kamash malon. Says the Gemara, so now you're telling me, because this is the maskana that we came up with. You're telling me, as we welcome Avram, who's watching us as well, says the maskana of the sugya above is that only if they agree to make the wall. But if they don't agree to make the wall, then Shelley can't force Marshall to make a wall, because hezek re'iyah lav shmei hezek. So the Gemara says, the hezek re'iyah lav shmei hezek is an invasion of privacy, is the fact that people could see into your courtyard not considered a damage. Tajma, v'chein begina, and likewise a gina, makom shenagu ligdar, if it's a minig to put up a fence. That seems to be that the prevalent minig is to insist on a fence. Says the Gemara, that's different. Because in the garden, Shelley is growing crocuses. You should see what Shelley is growing. Shelley is going rear balsam. He's and Marshall is looking at him. He's green with envy. He's going to give him an ayin hara. So there, it's different. Says the Gemara. I didn't say on the public line that Shelley is also planting something that starts with an M. Says the Gemara. Says the Gemara. Gina Shani. Kid Rababa. Am Rababa. Am Ravuna. Am Rav. Also, Lodom Lama B'stei Chavera B'shoshi Omedes B'kay Masaya. You can't stand by your friend's field when it's in full growth, because it's going to give an ayin hara. Now, by the way, ayin hara is that if a person is envious of something that you have, then if you're guilty of flaunting it, then Hashem could say to you, I didn't give you this, so you should cause people pain. And he could take it away. Or you have to be careful. Somebody gets a brand new car, and he has a neighbor who doesn't have a car. And he says to him, come, you want to smell the fresh leather? You can't do that. That's it. You're flirting with an ayin hara. Here's a person, he only has one bedroom in his house. And you just did construction, and you turned your garage into a bedroom, and you have a loft, and you tell him, come in, you see I could have 5 children now in the you don't do that. You don't do that. It says it says by v'chein gina. So that implies that it's the same thing by a courtyard. So doesn't that imply that this has agreed by a courtyard too? It says no, agvil v'gazes. When it says v'chein, it's going on the building material. That if the minig is to use cut stone, uncut stone, or cut stone, that's what it's going on. Tajma says the Gemara, but Hezekriya is not Riyah. Chaysul Chatzir Shenafel, if a wall of a courtyard falls, we require them, livnois ad daled amas. We require them to rebuild it up to 4 amas. Says the Gemara, no, that's different. Because nafel shani. If it falls down, it's different. Because since they already agreed to a courtyard, so then he said, look, we agreed on this. He could force him to contribute to rebuild it. Says Gemara, the karila my karila. Obviously, what's the havamim? This is the karila my karila. That you mention it. Why do you mention it? Well, what's the havamim? Of course, it says only if it fell down. Says Gemara, no. I might think that maybe that din is true even if it didn't fall down. Even in the get-go, you could force. But sefer it's strikalei. Why does it say that you could force? Medala amas alamala. Even if the wall was 6 amas, you could only ask him to build up to 4 amas. Medal amas amal, but anything after 4 amas, ein mechayvin, I say. You can't say, well, before it was higher. Because since up to 4 amas it's sufficient for privacy, you can't insist that it should be built higher. Tajma, still asking about Hezekriya, kaifin, I say, as we welcome in Moshe Lehman, Kaifin I say, we're missing some key players tonight. I know we give a shout out to Mark, who's in Eretz Yisrael, and Gedalia, who's at a chasana, A.B. Spry, who is not able to come because of a conflict of shiurim, but we are missing people, and we want to get more people. We want to get more people. Says the Gemara on the next kasha. Tajma, kaifin aisai livnais beishar v'deles l'chatzer. We force all the occupants of the courtyard to build a secure door at the front of the courtyard that separates the courtyard from the street, and also a beishar, also a guardhouse. Now the purpose of this guardhouse is that when the door opens up to the Rishus Harabim, if there wouldn't be the guardhouse there, then everybody in the Rishus Harabim would get a full view of people lounging around in the courtyard. Everybody is lounging around, casual in the courtyard. They're eating. They don't want the whole street, the 50 people in the street to see them. So you see, Hezekriya is an issue. Says Gemara, Shma Mina Hezekriya Shmei Hezek. Says, well, that's different. That's the public walking in. 50 people in the public, that's different than Marshall looking at Shelley. Marshall is his neighbor. Hezek and the Rabbim, Shani. The Hezek from the public is different. Says the Gemara, Udiyachid Lai, but from an individual, not Tajma, Ein Cholkin es Achat. So this is what I told you. There is certain, if the courtyard is very small, then it's indivisible. Then they can't force to divide. Says, Marshall and Shelley neither of them can insist on dividing it unless each one has 4 by 4 amas, which is between 6 by 6 or 8 by 8 feet. But if there is enough, chalkin, then Marshall could say, look, I want to divide it. Now, doesn't that mean I want to divide it with a fence? My labakaisel? He said, no. Only with marker, only with peg markers. He could say, this is my area. I could put a pickleball court here if I want. And Shelley says, this is my area. I could plant my crocuses if I want. Tajma. Now, this is something we had in Bava Metzia. Hakaloinais. Let's say Reb Avram, Armenian man, we're going to be able to say a Kaddish tonight because Reb Avram came. Hakaloinais. Let's say Reb Avram has a window, and I'm his neighbor. Bein milmala, bein milmata, bein mikenegdon dalaramas. If I want to build a wall in front of his window, first of all, I have to keep it 4 amas away from his window, that I don't block his light. And if I want to build it, it either has to be 4 amas above the top of his window, or 4 amas below the bottom of his window. Now, why is that? V'tani Allah, milmalan, it has to be 4 amas above, kidei shelo yotzitz v'yira, so that somebody shouldn't stand on the wall and be able to peek in through his window. Milmaton, it has to be 4 amas below, kidei shelo yamoid v'yira mikenegdon, that somebody shouldn't stand on it and be able to see in his window. And mikenegdon, opposite it, it has to be 4 amas away from it, kidei shelo yapim. So in order not to darken him, in order not to take away his light. But you see, we're worried about people standing on top of the wall, or standing on the top and looking from underneath, or standing on top and looking down. So you see, we're worried about Hazik Riyah. Says the Gemara, oh, you're talking about his house? Of course there's Hazik Riyah with the house. Hazik and the Bay is Shani. By the way, you see that you can't say Avram by shades. So here you see a complete example of a change in Minig Medina. Now there would be no such thing that we're worried about peeking into Avram's house, because everybody has shades, everybody has blinds. There would be one issue over here, that I would have to bring my wall 4 amas away from his window in order not to block his light. Of course, that's only an existing window. If he didn't have a window there, that's different. Right? If I had a wall and now he wants to open a window, he can't say that my wall is in the way of his window. But if he has a pre-existing window, so then I can't put a wall there because I'm causing a darkening of his light. Okay, Rabbi, so we're going to stop over here now. I did the Mishnah. Oh, by the way, I should give a shout out to Aaron Swade, who told me that his grandchildren are going away for the summer, and he had to eat out with them tonight. So he told me he's going to miss regretfully. We did the Mishnah Yomis already because after this we're now going to do the for the Shabbos table, but we're going to do a Kaddish first. Reb Chananya ben Akasha Amarat